Shift your mindset, shift your trajectory. Today on the PeopleNova Podcast, we chat with a Boston native about his path to shifting his trajectory. Kevin Tai started as an educator, then followed his passion to become an executive portrait photographer running his own business. Kevin and I chat about striving towards progress, not perfection. As many of you know, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Perhaps you also feel the pang of perfectionism once in a while. Kevin shares a few suggestions on how to ask for help. Yes, something that is hard for many of us. Let's jump into the conversation with Kevin Tai. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the PeopleNova Podcast. My name is Rachel O'Neill, and today I am here with a very good friend. Hey, Kevin.
Hi, Rachel.
Kevin, can you introduce yourself for our audience?
My name is Kevin Tai. I born in Boston and raised in Boston and lived in Boston my entire life. So I love this place.
So today we're talking about the human side of business. Kevin, what does that mean to you?
So I am a photographer, now full-time photographer post-pandemic. And being a photographer, I think a lot of people forget that when you take a picture of a person, like as a photographer, speaking to other photographers, you got to really get to know the person, even models, because for me, it's always been about getting the best out of each person and their uniqueness out of each person too. So really understanding your client, I think it's the most important thing.
Yeah, Kevin did a fantastic job with my headshots. Thank you, Kevin.
You are awesome.
Oh, it was super
so
awkward.
much fun.
Oh my God, it was so weird.
It is. That's what everybody says that too.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing?
Why did you pick a weird profession?
It's easy, I think. I had a camera, I have some lights, and I just take pictures of people.
Yeah.
Its startup cost is only like a few $1,000s, so that's actually really nice.
Great.
But I think it's I was a teacher before this, so before pandemic hit, and I would have students come in all over the world every single week, like every Monday or Tuesday. There's like a new crop of students that come in, and for me, it's an opportunity to get to know them very quickly, integrate them into an international classroom, get to know their intrinsic and extrinsic motivations of why they're here. Because some students are here for business, some students are here for school, some on vacation, and then to integrate all that together so that everybody's like really happy and like ready to learn together.
Wow.
Even with different ages, different religions, different levels of languages. And that's always been something that's really amazing and fun for me. And then with photography, it's the same thing, but one-on-one for maybe 15 minutes, maybe a couple of hours, to get to know them, to get to understand them, and to really pull out their best selves.
Yeah. How do you do that? What are some tips and tricks?
So as a business, I think something that I've learned is you have to kind of build that trust as early as possible.
Okay.
So when I first learned, it was when they walked through the doors, I would greet them. We don't actually take pictures for maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes. We sit down, we have some soda or like a Fiji water, some snacks, and so then they get to relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And I get to kind of see what their humor is like.
Yeah.
I get to see what kind of music they like, and then go from there. More recently this year, I've also learned to call them beforehand and do Zoom calls or just get them on the phone. I get an inclination of what the personality is like from there as well. And I get to answer a lot of the questions ahead of time. I get to reassure them what the process is like. And then they come in and they're like kind of ready.
Okay.
Right? And so we're already friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason I asked the question is because in business, right, you're either working with clients such as you or employees, right, or candidates interviewing, right? And there's a lot about how do I break the ice? How do I get beyond the awkward social graces to like have a genuine conversation, especially when it's in interviewing. I feel like interviewing, everyone's on their best behavior. And so like, how do you build that trust? Trust is weird. Everyone has different trust.
Yeah. So matching the person's energy when they walk into the room. So I'm an introvert. So I like my preferences if they're already like calm and stuff like that, and that's really nice. But I still have to kind of kick up the energy a little bit. If they're coming in hot and they're going, I just got to match that with them. They come in, so like I always try to greet them at the door, welcome them in. Something they do at hotels, which is really cool, is that like, thank you for coming, thank you for being a part of this. Like, it's like I'm paying you money as a person who's renting out the room, but then it's like the host, the person behind the counter is always just so thankful and just so helpful and just taking the time, even though there's a line of people behind you. And so I try to create that right at the very beginning, like, thank you for coming. How was the drive? Thank you for making your way here. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Thank you for taking you're putting your trust in me for doing this.
You start with gratitude.
It makes them feel really good, and it makes them feel really nice. And then there's a part of it. It's a collaboration when we take pictures. And then a lot of the times they come up to me and say, I don't take good pictures. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm the photographer. You don't take any pictures.
And the humor. Great.
and then so just a lot of jokes, a lot of ridiculous things, a lot of breaking down that stereotype, not stereotype, but the face they do when you get in front of a camera, and it's like, I said, okay, cool. Stop smiling. And they're like, huh, what?
But I thought I was supposed to smile. It's totally an automatic reaction. My partner is in the film industry, and he documented the weekend we went camping the other weekend. And so he was always taking pictures and this and that. And he's gotten to the point where he'll like, don't look at me, look away. I'm like, all right, I'll look away. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. But there is that automatic, oh, there's a camera pointed at me, I smile. I'm not quite sure it's a good look for anyone.
No, it's and you lose it, right? Especially I would say older people don't like to smile because they do the fake smile right here. And then they lose this. There's no wrinkles. But if you don't have wrinkles, you don't look real. It's like, or it's just like, right?
So in the age of Corona and all the masks, again, my partner will send me a picture with him and his mask, and I'll be like, you're not smiling. He's like, I'm smiling. And I'm like, no, you're not. Your eyes. I can tell you're smiling with your eyes, right? And that's where you get the little wrinkle. I don't know. Do I wrinkle? I don't know. Who knows?
I did that for a person, a model was doing a mask shoot the next day. And so we spent maybe 30 minutes. I was just teaching her how to look confident and how to look joyful underneath the mask, because you lose like 80% of your face because it's just like this.
Right.
All the expressions like here, but it's also in the eyes. So we spent maybe like 30 minutes looking confident like this, and then looking like happy, and then embracing the wrinkles.
I'm now mirroring. I'm like, oh, let me try. If you're listening in the car, folks, I get the video. It's primo.
I love it. And then I get to show the behind, the before and after. So always like that first picture, like that. And then I coach them through it. Walking them through each part. And then that's how we build that trust. And then I show them on my laptop and like, hey, see, okay, so you did this. Isn't this cool? And then they're like, yeah, this is so cool. And then we go to the next part, and then we do something else where we hold a baby alligator, and then we go into the next part, and then like, wow, this is so amazing. And so that's kind of how we build that trust from like a small thread into like a rope.
Have you ever worked with someone who just couldn't get them there?
Yes. Yes. Three people in particular. All women and all much older. Typically are the more difficult ones to get into the trust quickly. There was I learned this a long time ago. Sometimes it's not about the pictures. It's about getting them into their heads where they are at their best of who they are. So not everybody's a smiler. Not everybody's like a serious person. So it's just trying to find that. When I first started, a therapist came in, and she had very strong features, and she came to me because she wanted to look warm, and she wanted to look welcoming to her clients.
Which is important for client development. Sure.
but she couldn't because she's very like she's very like all the time.
Okay.
So we stopped, we sat down for 45 minutes and I just had her tell me stories of all the people that she helped.
Yeah.
And it's just 45 minutes of just her like just divulging all like why she
The
loved what she
purpose.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
We got in front of the camera and I was like, give me the look that you give when a person walks through the door for the very first time. And then she gave that look and boom, that was it. That was the winning shot. And it took maybe an hour to do it. And which is fine because that's what she needed.
Yeah.
And so that was probably one of my proudest like moments of realization. Like it's not about me taking the pictures, it's about finding out who they are and what they
Yeah.
want and the emotion that they want to portray and for the real self.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That is phenomenal. So I love how you say totally relevant to our podcast, folks. I know we're talking about photography, but getting into people's heads, right? Like understanding how they want to show up, right? Show up emotionally,
Yeah.
show up in pictures. I work with people who need to show up as a leader, right? Like, what does that look like? And how do you get inside their heads, right? And then like, how do you cogitate through that to figure out where am I my most authentic? That is a great story.
And there's a lot of people who are like that. I shot a politician for the first time ever, and I won't say his name because don't want to jinx anything, but
Yeah, exactly.
he it's just for his campaign, and he's talking about I took I always do a digital dive. I look at all their pictures, and for someone who's in a public spotlight, there's a lot of pictures, and a
Yep.
lot of them are very stern, right? Right, because that's confident or very like big and happy.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. So when he came in, I kind of knew that he was going to go for the camera look, right? So
Yeah.
and makes sense. But he wanted warm. He wanted to reach out to another group of audience members, and so we also did the same thing. Just had to. I felt kind of rude, but I had to break him down. I was like, you got to stop that. You got to like this is not who you want. It's not who you look at this.
Yeah.
This is warm, and they're like, no. It's like, all right,
Great.
work with me here. And then we had to
Let's
kind
stop
of
that.
So that was a tough one because that took about 30 minutes as well before he eased into it and built that trust with me, where I had to exert full control when he's like the boss and he has his own team of people.
Yeah.
And he very much controls his look as a politician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That must have been some weird dynamics.
It's always nerve-wracking when a CEO or when someone of like a high stature comes in and these are people that I want to work with. And it's always like, they're just people.
They're just people.
They're just people.
They're just people. I remember dinner table conversation with my dad. Like I was young, tiny, young. I don't know, old enough to work. So it was like a job related, like we're just chatting, having, dinner conversation. And I was like, oh my God, but he's like the CEO and like, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh, status and like nervousness. And my dad's like, he puts his pants on the same way everybody else does. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I guess you're right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that like parents are so smart. Dad jokes. Like, yeah, they're just people, right?
They're
And
people.
like I think that is what has stayed with me when I even interact with, big VCs and well-named things. I'm like, yeah, man, y'all are people just like me. And you have, emotions, fears, insecurities, confidence, joys, superpowers, all the emotions in the rainbow.
Yeah. And it's fun just really getting into that, like, what is it that they love and care about? Like, it's a skill that I used to think I needed to have, was being an extrovert. Like, I'm just gonna come in, I'm gonna make you like happy and then I forgot who it was told me, like, what is your strength? Like, up until now, not as a photographer, but what's your strength? And it's like, well, I've been a teacher all my life. And well, what do you do? Why are you successful as a teacher? And it's quickly getting to know a student in about 5 or 10 minutes, building a relationship and then integrating them into the whole class. And then building that relationship over time. And so the person was like, lean into that when you take pictures, like embrace that introvertedness of you and wanting to build relationships. Because again, people are just people. Because I taught the vice president or the I think it was the president of mergers and acquisitions of Santander Bank from Brazil.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, she's a big, and then she's like, no,
Yeah.
I no, she's like, I just want to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to learn. You're the teacher, you tell me what to do. It's like, that's it, really? It's like, yeah, you're the teacher.
Yeah.
You're the expert. You tell me, you help me.
I shy away from the word expert, but that's for other reasons.
Oh, okay.
But it's understanding, that we're all just people, and hey, we're here to learn. We all have different styles,
Yep.
and different approaches. I think your adaptability is really an amazing trait. I think of
Thank
the
you.
adage that that says if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be a hammer. Is that a hashtag? It should be a hashtag.
It's like, we gotta put it right on the screen right there.
Yeah, don't be a hammer. Right? Like, and that is the joy of, I think, being a person, is that you do get to learn different skills and interests and use your brain to learn, whether from a teacher or an expert or a YouTube video or a podcast such as this. Oh, that's great. So we're in the middle of a pandemic. How do you take pictures in a pandemic? Do you do that over Zoom? Do you do it in person?
I tried over Zoom. I didn't like it very much.
No.
That connection is much more difficult for me to make over Zoom because the other person also has to hold their camera up if they don't have a tripod or pull things out. I think we jerry rigged something where we put like boxes on top of tables on top of chairs to do it one time, and it was like, yeah, it's a lot of work.
That's janky.
Yeah, but some people are really good at it. Some people they do amazing online portraits. So there is definitely a market for that.
Yeah.
But when the pandemic hit, was right around the time that I found out I had a child, and so I used to shoot everything in the house, and now I had to take everything out of the house. So in June, I had a studio space that I rented out, but then it got too small, and then I found another studio space in I think in August. And so we bring people there, and I'm wearing a mask, and it's a large space, so it's really nice. So I can stand about 10 feet back from the person.
Great. So all physically distant, all within good protocols. So
wiping things down, and then only about 1 or 2 people a day, as opposed to I used to try to pack people in one after the other. And so that gives times to make sure I can clean up all the lights and everything.
Yeah. And not feel rushed, because sometimes it takes 45 minutes to break the ice with someone.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's shooting until whenever we need. So I book 3 hours of time, but there's only a few people. If we go beyond 3 hours, that's perfectly fine, because it's some people do take much longer.
Nice. So what are some milestones that you are looking to grow or do with your business? How can our listeners help? I like to call this the put juju into the universe, and it will happen.
This year, I was talking to Derek, which is, I think, one of your interviewees, a long time ago, I think back in January of 2020. And one of the goals that we brought up was shooting 5 boards, 5 executive portraits, shooting for like 5 companies, shooting for like 10 events. Just we had all these numeric goals that we were going to work towards.
Great.
And then that didn't happen. Shooting some headshots for politicians.
Nobody's vision board in 2020 happened. So
it's like, but what I'm looking towards doing is still the same thing, but in 2021, not necessarily events per se, but I am looking towards still getting boards together, still getting executive portraits, which is not very different, but different headshots where it's just here, and doing fuller body and more in the environment. And a dream of mine, and one of my goals that I wrote, is like traveling across the country to shoot for another company or another person. That's always like an ideal, like going beyond just Boston. I
Yeah.
think that would be amazing to do.
So is it
Yeah.
is it following one person around the country, shooting them as they travel, or is it flesh that out for me?
It's like maybe like a company wants me to do headshots for their teams and be consistent. So
Okay.
let's say there's a Arizona branch and
Yeah.
then a Boston branch, and they
Got
want to
it.
have consistency. And so we'll do something in Boston, and then we'll go
Nice.
out to Arizona and shoot in a very similar style, so that it matches across the company. I think one person asked me to do that right now, one in Pennsylvania and then one in
Great.
Boston, because her
Great.
co-founder's in Pennsylvania.
Oh my gosh, you're on your way to your goal. That's amazing.
Yeah, so we're in discussion about that. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, it'll happen. Now that you said it, it'll happen. The question I like to ask all my guests, what's your favorite art? You're already an artist, photographer, so you must love it.
Mhm.
But I'll asterisk your answer. Let's hear something new from Kevin.
I love movies and comic books, and then especially intersection of the two.
Okay.
Comic books are like one of the most wonderful ways to understand culture, society, expectations, what's the beat of the world in a country. Um, I love watching movies because it's kind of the same thing where there will be a generation of certain types of how we view terrorism, or how we view politics, or how we view love, or how we view what it means to be a teenager, or an introvert, or a hero, what it means to be a hero or an anti-hero. And so like all these different stories, it's a great way to just kind of delve into it, and then to watch it again and again, and then listening to the music, listen to the sound effects, rewatching it multiple times and listening for the dialogue. It's kind of like reading a book. I like books too, but like books a little bit more work. But but there's so many more like mediums of emotional expression in a movie. So I love being able to see the character development and growth over time, and then the subtleties of really good actors, of like their facial expressions when they're disappointed, or when they're happy, or when they're like thinking of something. Like I love that type of medium, and to see.
Are you do you have a favorite?
A lot of the Avengers movies,
Yeah.
Marvel movies are really, really great. I like a lot of romance movies, so I call it husband research, um, to watch romance movies. My wife does not watch any of this with me, for the record. She's like, you go watch it, and then you teach me what you've learned, and then you do it. So I was like, okay.
Friday rom-com dates on your own? Okay.
Yeah, I will go to when the movies were theaters around, I would go and watch a romantic comedy by myself, and I'll come back, and then I'll use the lines on my wife, and she's like, you got that. So that's also why we don't watch together, because she's like, that was from the movie. I was like, yeah, that was. I'm sorry. She's like, you need something new.
Hey man, these writers come up with some really good lines.
It's really good stuff. And some really creative date ideas, and really creative one-liners. It's good. I steal them all.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Not a romantic comedy, but yeah.
No. Good. Movie reference nonetheless. Awesome. Yeah. Do you read a lot of comics and graphic novels? I also know they're not from other countries.
Not as much anymore.
Okay.
It was easier to pick it up when the libraries were open.
Oh, great point.
And then I just kind of sit down and just kind of read through that, or the translated versions of that, like Naruto and Dragon Ball, some of the classics, things like that. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned it gives kind of a perspective on like society in that point in time, in that moment. I never thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm. I think like how we view superheroes, I think, or like the most recent TV show, The Boys, season 2.
Yeah.
It is so amazing because it's how we see society, and then it's just huge critique on that. Or another one would be Battlestar Galactica, and how we view what it means to be a politician, or what it means to do right, or to do good, or to sacrifice. What does it mean to fall in love? Like all in the sci-fi world where everyone's like crammed together, right? like societal roles was one of my favorite episodes, where it's like, well, this person's a plumber. There's nobody else in the universe. There's only like 1,000 people left. So of course his son's gonna be a plumber. There's no choice. And it's like, is there a choice? Is it really like, can you change your stars? What does that mean? Or like, does the government control your like what kind of jobs that are available for society, for the benefit of society, because we need it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's really great questions. Like, yeah.
So let's ask a really great question. Can people change their trajectory?
I think some people have the privilege to.
Tell me more.
Oh, now we're getting deep. Okay.
Yeah.
I love this. So my parents, my father had a third grade education.
Okay.
And he came out to the United States and he did not get any more education at all. And he became, he was very lucky and he became a factory worker, and then very fortunate that the owner of the factory sold him the factory at cost. So pretty much at a loss.
Okay.
And he did what he needed to do for me to become successful. When I said I want to become a teacher, he was very disappointed at me in high school, until he realized how much I loved it and how much change that I was doing. So I got my degree, and then I taught overseas. I came back, and then I wanted to be a photographer. And I never told him, right? Like I didn't tell him until after the pandemic, after like I was fired, and then I gave him my plan, and then he was actually kind of proud of me. And he wanted me to be what all immigrants are. People come from poverty, the doctor, the engineer. He wanted me to feel safe, and he wanted me to have a family that is well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And money is the way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or doctor and engineer.
Yes. These like key roles are societal proven to be successful.
Yeah, and status symbols and everything, right? And so I think for some people, having that education is a privilege, to be able to think creatively, be able to have access to internet, have access to podcasts and things like this with you, listen to people with lots of experience and made mistakes. I can learn from that. But then I think in some places, money is still a big deal. Status is still a big deal, because you're coming from nothing. And the only way to succeed is through education and through what we would find as in America, the traditional way of making money.
Mm-hmm.
But for some others, it might be the only way, because there is no other way. There is no entrepreneurial mindset because of a variety of different factors. Or there's you have to take on the family business, because that's the only thing that they know. Or you have to, I don't know. It's going so deep into this now. I haven't talked about this in a really long time. But I do think some cultures do have the privilege of not worrying about money, and not worrying about wealth, and not worrying about status. In some cultures, you need to have that. Yeah.
Is it cultures? Is it socioeconomic status? Is it lineage?
I think that's all part of culture, right? So even with the United States, people who come from poverty have a certain mindset, because their needs are more immediate. And so that's a culture. And then people who come from maybe not necessarily wealth, but people don't have to worry about their meal for the next day, can't think of other things. And so the way they value money and value time in relationships.
You know what? It's interesting that you touched on this. I was doing some client work 2 nights ago, literally, and I wrote down long-term vision is difficult when there are short-term urgent matters, such as poverty, such as transportation.
Yeah.
How do I get to my job and not get fired for being late? The teas broke down. Shit, right? Like the privilege of being able to take an Uber when the tea breaks down. We're in Boston, we call it the tea. Right? Having that long-term vision of change of not doing the family business, doing your own path. Yeah, it's harder when you have those short-term immediate needs that you have to
And
focus
it's
on.
and it's not necessary because you're come from poverty, you're going to stay in poverty.
Mm-mm.
Um, but there are certain uh, where you're born isn't necessarily where you're going to be. And in the United States, there's a lot of opportunities for that because there's the Greater Boston Food Bank. There's things like Venture Cafe and Roxbury Innovation Center, which works with local communities to help them with
Yep.
free resources such as yourself when you offer your half an hour of your time to others.
Yeah, I
That
mentioned at Venture
otherwise,
Cafe. I also teach entrepreneurs with Optima Boot Camp that
oh yeah.
specifically focuses on Black and Latinx entrepreneurs and founders.
hmm
Yep.
and so having role models um, is great. So I got a scholarship in school for university, and one of the reasons why we got the scholarship is so that we can stay in the city and become mentors still, rather than getting a really good education and then leaving.
And leaving.
And leaving the city or leaving our poverty, leaving squalor,
Mm-hmm.
so that we don't have to worry about like debt. We can focus in on working, not necessarily for money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people come to me still for mentorship, and begin that a lot of that recently. But like, so I just offer my time to them and just let's talk about what your goals are. Let's talk about these things and here are the resources for what you um, for what your goals are. Let me connect you to somebody else.
Great.
Because that's important. I think Sheryl Sandberg talks about that in her book. Like mentors, coaches are what differentiates everybody from being super successful versus kind of staying put in where you are.
Yeah.
And having those connections.
Right. There are people who are like, I don't need help. I'm going to do it on my own. Self-made. And I'm like, even self-made people had help.
Yeah.
But it is about understanding what resources are out there and sharing them forward. And so with my boot camp entrepreneurs, right? I'm dropping links and like competitions like into our we have a WhatsApp chat, and I'm like da da da, like there's this, and I also calibrate, and I'm like, oh, am I annoying? Am I dropping like links to random shit? They're like, no, keep it up, and I'm like, okay, just checking. What's your favorite resource that people don't know about that you want to share with the world
Oh yes.
when
So
someone comes to you?
people always like, I want to be a photographer, and I'm like, okay, cool. Why? And they're like, because I was like, okay, you want to do it as a business, or you want to do it as a hobby, or you want to do it as a just an expensive hobby, like you make money to fund your hobby, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's one of the first things that people need to know, and it's where they want to be. But if you do want to go into the business of photography, the best resource for me, there's actually 3 places. One is SLR Lounge Workshop,
Okay.
which teaches you everything you need from picking up your very first entry-level camera to making a $1 million business. So how to pick up a camera, what all the settings are, how to use flash, how to pose, how to talk to people, but then also the business side of it all as well. And 2,000 hours of education for $250
Wow.
a year. It's amazing. For headshots, it would be the headshot crew,
Okay.
and they taught me a lot. Like they every single thing that I've learned was from the headshot crew on how to pose, how to connect with people. And we talked about photography as a business. It's always photography as a business as opposed to a hobby, which it can be. And then Headshot Hot Sauce, it's about the marketing, specific for headshot photographers, but also marketing as a photographer. What do we do? And so I've been producing a lot of videos, and it's because they're encouraging us to get into videography. They're encouraging us to update our websites all the time. As they learn more stuff, the moderators are like, hey, go in, try this out, do this.
Yeah.
And then when we get better, they have to be even better than us.
Yeah.
And so it pushes them, and we all work together. That one is a bit more expensive, at $750 a year.
Yeah.
But it's worth every penny if we're looking at ourselves as professional business people as opposed to just a hobbyist.
Great. So, so there are all these resources out there, right? Those 3 that you mentioned, we'll put them in the show notes so everybody can click on them if we have budding headshot photographers in our listener crew. But it brings up, at least for me, the point of, are there really secrets anymore? Like, I feel like there's so many resources out there, and there's so many cheat codes, to use a gamer answer, right? Like, somebody's figured this out before, right? Thank God for YouTube. Like, whatever it is that you are curious about or interested in or want to learn, there has to be cheat codes out there. There has to be somebody who's blogged about it or who's written about it, right? So circling back, like, do people have an opportunity to change and set their intentions and not follow in the family footsteps?
Yeah, I think there's just Boston is one that I'm a little bit biased, but I think Boston is a great city because we have so many people who just want to give. Successful people who've been around for decades, such as Score.
Yep.
Score's all over the United States. But you can connect with your local library or just Score to find a mentor to talk to for an hour, and then you can keep talking to the same person for years, really. Venture Cafe with the free mentorship, but also just networking and connecting with lots of different people. I know that there are a lot of like authors who give things out for free. Vanessa Van Edwards does a lot of that, where she has TED Talks, and then she also has Creative Live Talk. She has her books, and she has YouTube videos on body language and how to connect with people and how to network, how to be nice. All the email lists, if you like to read. There's always like emails of with stuff you can read. There's just so many. And then Roxbury Innovation Center every few months has the ability to what's the word when you pitch
nights.
Pitch nights. And so they have that every few months, and these are not like multi-million-dollar business. These are some mom and pop shops that are just looking to make enough money, a couple $100,000, because they love what they do and to build a business for their family. And there's those resources for that as well. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned is just ask. I was so afraid to just ask because, these people are they're so much better than me, and they're so scary and stuff. But just asking for that.
Why is it hard to ask?
For me, I feel like I'm bothering other people. They're so important. They're so big. Like they run groups of like tens of thousands, and they have these courses with like where they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's like just me. I'm just there. But for systems, for example, I'm not very good at admin, and so I talked to somebody. I was like, "Hey, could you help me with?" He's another photographer. With this stuff, I'll pay you. Like if you help me through my system. And it's like, yeah, let's just talk. And then we just talked. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. He's like, yeah, we'll talk again in a couple of weeks or something, a couple of months, and see where you are. I'm like, oh, that's really nice of you to do that.
People are nice. People are really nice.
And if they are busy, they'll be like, yeah, let's make a schedule someday. And if you really want to go really deep, maybe we'll pay for your time. But I think for a lot of it, it's a lot of respect. And then if you want to coach, then you can kind of pay for that specifically.
Right, next level.
I know Derek does his as well. He's so awesome.
He's great. We had a great conversation. He is an amazing human. If you have listeners, if you haven't checked out the podcast with Derek Duplessis, I actually just recommended it to one of my entrepreneurs. I'm like, sorry, shameless self-promotion, but you have to listen to my episode with Derek. Because it was, we chatted about one of the entrepreneurs that he's helping, and it was definitely on brand. So how, I know some people are nervous asking for help, right? How do we move beyond that? That I don't know, is it fear of asking for help, or?
I think it's a fear of vulnerability. If I ask for help, that means I'm not good at something. I'm missing something, I'm lacking. It's a fear of like, I'm not, for me, I feel like I need social media. I have to put up this persona of like, I'm awesome, I'm the best. I've come to put up my struggles as well on social media, just so people will see that it's not always, roses and stuff.
Mhm.
I think we're so conditioned towards being perfect and showing our best 1%, that the other 99%, we it's not pretty.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it also depends on where we want to, right? So like, do you want to make a business? You can't do it alone. You
Yeah.
need some advice. You need to, I won't say need to, but it's definitely in a good place for you to figure out where your blind spots are that you don't know are blind spots.
Humans are solopreneur is really not a thing, right? Like
Mhm.
humans are group tribal creatures. Like we need people around us, right? And so that I know everything superhero, like I can do everything, like that's just not real, right?
Mm.
um and it's tough. So all my listeners know I'm a recovering perfectionist. I say it all the time because the more that I say it, so reinforces to me, but it also acknowledges that we are not perfect. Like humans are not perfect, and so why do we have expectations either on ourselves or on others to be perfect?
Mhm. Yeah, we shouldn't have expectation on other people. It's a progress, not perfection, is what someone said. Chase Jarvis, I think, said that. Just create volumes and volumes of work. So one person who he came to me, he was like, mentor was the first line, and I was like, let's not be mentors. Let's just hang out. And so one of the things that he wanted to do was buy all this gear, and he wanted to be like awesome and amazing and stuff. But
Yeah.
he literally just bought a camera, a really nice, better camera than mine, 4 times more expensive than mine, like 2 months ago. And so I gave him an activity where it's like, I just want you to take a picture every day for a whole year.
Great.
And then I'm going to give you challenges, and then you're going to fulfill those challenges. Like, oh, I need to buy this equipment. Like, well, try changing this on your camera. Just change the setting. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I did it. It's like, yeah, you did it. Keep going. So, he asked, and his blind spot was, as all people of hobbies are, they want to buy all the best stuff.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily need the best stuff. I'm working on a sub $1,000 camera, and I'm making tens of thousands of dollars from photography on lights that also are just $7 each.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really the personal component to it. It's the back end work that is what's important. But you don't know that until you meet somebody that can help you with that.
Yeah. And help you get into your own head that we started this conversation with.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because humans do that. Like we get wrapped up in either external validation or external indicators of success, or
Yes.
I have all the brand name stuff, therefore it must be winning or successful or arrived or achieved or whatever the superlative is. But yeah, there's a lot of trial and error that goes into making sausage. Is that the euphemism? I don't know. Who knows these days?
It's kind of weird.
Fantastic. Kevin, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the PeopleNova podcast. There's tons of links that we're going to drop into the show notes for our listeners to pick up on and explore themselves.
Thank you for having me on. This is awesome.
Thank you for joining us on the PeopleNova podcast. My name is Rachel O'Neill. The team here at PeopleNova Human Capital would love to hear from you. We are always curious to hear from our listeners. So go ahead and send us an email, podcast@peoplenovahc.com, with your workplace questions or suggestions for who you'd like to see on our show. If you send us an audio memo, we may include your question on the show. Lastly, we are here to amplify. Our guests are amazing entrepreneurs, and we want you to forward our newsletter to someone in your network who needs to know the amazing things our guests are doing, so together we can make an impact. Thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next time.